Hi, it's Stella, and I'm here on the hottest day of the year, sitting by my fireside to have a fireside chat with you. I want to talk about wisdom on this episode of the podcast, specifically the wisdom found in the Book of Proverbs and how it's helping me as I live on the edge. I hope it helps you too. I also want to share some good news in my life and tell you more about it. So let's go. The biblical book of Proverbs is the book of wisdom. And I love how it speaks at the very beginning in chapter 1, verse 20. Wisdom cries out in the street. In the square she raises her voice. At the busiest corner she cries out. At the entrance of the city gate she speaks. How long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing and fools hate knowledge? I love how wisdom is personified as a woman, Lady Wisdom. Sophia is the word in Greek. Wisdom personified as a woman calling out, begging us to be wise. There are great examples of Proverbs that you can read. The beginning is a bit of an essay on wisdom, and then it's just a collection of wise sayings. Things like, pride goes before a fall. You've probably heard that one. Or one of my favorites, gray hair is a crown of splendor. It is gained in a righteous life. Or there's the one, like a gold ring in a pig's snout, so is a beautiful woman who has no sense. It's fun to read Proverbs, but they're these little snippets. And so I've found that in preaching, we typically don't preach about them because they are just these little snippets. And so when I was at Oak Hill, I took on the challenge to try to preach on some books we never preach on because I wondered why. And I found out why. It's hard to do. And there are some parts of Scripture that really lend themselves to exposition, storytelling, preaching. And there's others that, like law and things, other genres that are important and helpful, but they don't necessarily make for a sermon. We use them in different ways. And so Proverbs is just that, a collection on wisdom. When I was at Oak Hill and I attempted to preach that sermon, I thought, I'll just collect really good Proverbs, the funniest ones, the best ones, and I'll get readers. I got 3 readers, 2 women and a man, and I had them alternate saying Proverbs. And I picked the most theatrical people I could find in the congregation, and it went really well. It was funny and interesting hearing them read through them. The funny thing was that at that time we were doing 3 services. I preached 1, but that Sunday I preached all 3. And so at the first service, my actors got up. They were phenomenal, but they were kind of surprised, as you often are in acting, what it felt like to get laughter. And it was fun for them to have people laugh at them, especially the one who was kind of the most theatrical about it. So in the next service, the other one ramped it up and got more theatrical. And by the 3rd service, they were all talking like this. And it was a little much. And I'm like, yeah, tone it down. But it kind of worked in that you can hear a great teacher, a great preacher, a great grandmother, grandfather sharing wisdom with you in the book of Proverbs. Probably the most famous passage in Proverbs comes in chapter 3. And chapter 3 begins, "My child, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and abundant welfare they will give you. Do not let loyalty and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good repute in the sight of God and all people." And here comes the famous part. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths." Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord. Turn away from evil. It will be a healing for your flesh and a refreshment for your body. And going on a bit, my child, do not despise the Lord's discipline or be weary of his reproof. For the Lord reproves the one he loves, as a father the son in whom he delights. That passage, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, has been just a beacon for me, a compass to remind me that I don't always understand, but that God will tell me what to do. God will direct my paths. It's especially meaningful for me because when my brother died, we were all trying to make sense of it, and it made no sense. And I remember just walking around his house like a zombie, looking at his things. He had such an interesting, quirky personality and so much cool stuff that he collected. And just walking around, trying to wrap my head around the fact that I would never see him again. And on his fridge was a little refrigerator magnet. And it was made out of construction paper with a little magnet glued on and a flower. I wondered who gave it to him, where he got it from. But it was that scripture. And it wasn't real familiar to me at the time. I hadn't memorized it. But none of us were sure about his state of mind and heart when he died, or where he was with God exactly. And so just knowing that he had that on his refrigerator, that he was walking in that way, that he was seeing it every day, I took that magnet, I still have it, and that passage is really meaningful to me. And I remember the first time I was volunteering for Vacation Bible School, and I was watching the children up there rehearsing their music, and they were singing that passage, that proverb, set to music, and I just burst out crying. That the scripture that I didn't learn until I was an adult, that these little children, maybe they didn't even understand it, lean not on your own understanding, but they were learning it, and what a gift that the church was giving them. And I think in times of crisis, times of difficulty, times when we're living on the edge, we just need clear instructions, black and white, as the Proverbs sometimes are. Just keep walking, just keep trusting. So I said I had good news to share, and I do. I am over the moon. I have a place to serve as a pastor again. I'm going to be an interim pastor at Johnson City Methodist Church. It's an independent Methodist church. I'll be the interim pastor starting June 1 until they find a permanent pastor. And I guess I'm becoming a bit of an expert on the edge and the in-between. But I think it's going to be great work. My friend, longtime seminary buddy, Lee Romero, has been there since we got out of seminary 14 years ago, has been their faithful pastor. And so they need somebody to walk with them in this interim and this in-between before they receive a full-time pastor. Probably for the summer, maybe up to 6 months, we'll see. But Johnson City, this is the crazy thing. It is exactly halfway between my house in Austin and the ranch. And I have spent, if you've listened to this podcast, I've spent over a year struggling with where are we going to live, which in these two places are we going to land, how is this all going to work? And God just put me right in the middle to hold me through until I figure out the bigger thing. It is such an answered prayer, and they're such lovely people. I'm loving getting to know them. There is a parsonage there. And when I was in Kyle, if any of you knew me at that time or were around me at that time, I loved having this bonus house that the church lent to me as a place to stay when I needed to, but also just a house that I could use to host people. Bible studies, gathering, youth, just friends. I had a friend who was having a rough time and just needed a place to be for the weekend, just to talk to God. I'm just so excited, and the cool thing is that Hunter is so ready for this. We've had ups and downs and times where me being a pastor has been a difficult thing for him, but right now he's just so ready to jump into it. And I think this is important for me as well, because I hope to continue this podcast But the podcast was never meant to be a substitute for church for anybody. And it wasn't supposed to be a substitute for ministry for me. It was just sort of an extra and an in-between, a place for maybe some of you who are searching. I worry when people are relying on people they see on YouTube or podcasts instead of real life relationships. And I am so excited to be back in real life relationships in a church with people. And so I'm sure that I'll be kind of figuring it out, and I hope that you'll keep listening and figuring it out with me. So one of the things that I've committed to do, as I've said many times if you're listening, is read through the Bible this year and just listen deeply to what God is saying. And I've been doing that. I've read far ahead of where I'm podcasting, and I think I need to slow down to stay better in sync. But I'm trying to get ahead a little bit and stay on top of things. But as I read through the Proverbs, I found it kind of jarring, like I said, because it's just boom, 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 boom. Proverbs has 31 chapters, so some people take on the discipline of, in a month with 31 days, reading a chapter a day. But it is a collection of sayings, and it's often attributed to King Solomon, famous for his wisdom. But really, it's a collection, and it's part of a section of the Bible, or books of the Bible, called the Writings, Psalms, Proverbs, and Job, or the wisdom literature. So it's a little bit different. But what's interesting about Proverbs is the setting. Proverbs was brought together in final form, it's believed, after the exile. So the kingdom fell, the people were exiled off to Babylon, and then slowly, in waves, they came back to the promised land. And it's interesting to think about that setting, because when you've had something devastating happen, when you've had a great disruption, and you get a second chance, you think to yourself, I want to get it right this time. That's certainly what I'm thinking. Is I've had a long break between serving churches. Is I want to be the best pastor I can be. I want to be awesome at it. I want to work hard. And as I said, Hunter's kind of in it with me. He realizes that there's times he's been a little checked out. We're both just saying, we want to do really well. And so I think that's where the people were at this time of collecting and writing down and putting together all of these proverbs that were among them for a long time. Is let's remember this. Yeah, maybe it's black and white. Maybe it's do good and you'll be blessed. And maybe that's we might think of as a little simplistic, because we know, like from Job and other places, that sometimes bad things happen to good people. But when we're starting over and grateful for that second chance, we're just thinking, let's remember, let's lean on wisdom. Let's do it right this time. Let's stay at it and be faithful. And so, as I said, I am so grateful to you and to the gift of getting to do a podcast. So I just want to throw out a couple of invitations as I wrap up the podcast. I will be preaching. I'll be guest preaching at Dripping Springs Methodist on May 25th at both services. And I'm grateful for Reverend Adam Thornton and Pastor Jesus for inviting me. Yes, their associate pastor is named Jesus. So I love being there because I get to be with Jesus. But I'll be preaching there on May 25th. Then on June 1st, I will be starting in Johnson City, and I get to lead worship and serve communion with Pastor Lee. I am so honored that we get to do that together. And then on June 8th will be my first sermon in Johnson City, and it's Pentecost. How cool is that? I get to preach my first sermon there on Pentecost. And so I'm going to have my hands full, and I'm also helping out with a couple other VBSs besides Johnson City, so I'm going to have my hands full. But this podcast has been a blessing, so I will keep going in some form or another, and I hope that you'll keep listening as you live with me on the edge of wherever you're living.